Hey lovely people, welcome to our Bumped Into, and thank you for lending me your ear. This is a show about the interesting people I meet who share their detailed journey of starting a business.
I started in my immediate circle, and so did Shaz and Siwa start in their immediate circles and started looking for people they knew could do hair.
And eventually, a friend of his, a very rich, influential friend of his, invited him to the book launch. He met Chris over there, and we got onto the show, and that's how it happened.
Or they share an intimate reflection of their life's journey thus far, filled with many lessons which hopefully you can benefit from. In trying to uncover who they really are, I ask questions such as, if you could change anything about the way you were raised, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Oh, if I could choose my own childhood.
Why do you think people don't like to talk about death?
It's scary. I'll tell you, my mom got sick.
So is there something that you've dreamed of doing for a long time? Number one. And if you have, why haven't you done it?
That's a tough one.
My name is Mnotho Mtshali, just a curious kid that has many questions for this world. And through this show, I seek to answer them. It's an absolute pleasure to meet you. And thank you once again for joining me. Welcome. This week, I bumped into Tauriq Adams. Sure, where do you even start with Tauriq? Tauriq is a serial entrepreneur who started a $1 million business in 12 months. And no, ladies and gentlemen, he's not doing Forex, please. He has gone from packing shelves in Woolworths.
When I got my first job, and that was for Woolworths in the waterfront. So I was a packer.
Wow.
I was a packer. Yeah. And what that meant was I would literally get up at something like 4 a.m, and I'd take a taxi from Lotus River to Wynberg.
To raising one of the fastest growing startups in Norway that turned over more than 1 million in its first year.
Yeah, I think very soon we were turning over 8 million NOK plus.
In this episode, we get into the detailed view of how he started his on-delivery food company. The details every entrepreneur needs, the how that we never hear in talks or conferences.
So what we did was we made a decision to insource the driving and control the driving ourselves. So in the early stages, we outsourced the company to do delivery, but the problem there was the fact that
we also touch on how his business went bankrupt, which almost destroyed his entire startup.
And what had happened with this company was they had run into liquidity issues as a business. And so they couldn't pay us. So I think the first month they couldn't pay us. I think the bill that they owed us was around 250,000 NOK.
Wow.
And in the second month.
And as always, we go deep. What genre would you say your life is?
Oof, my life. That's a tough one. If it was a movie,
I'm your host, Mnotho Mtshali, and I hope you enjoyed this show just as much as I enjoyed interviewing Tauriq. But again, let me just kick off then. Thank you for taking the time to be on the show and allowing me to interview you. I really think you have an awesome story, and I'm hoping we're gonna get a glimpse of the journey you've actually traveled on until which got you actually here. So, on that note, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself. Who is Tauriq, and tell us about yourself, especially for the listeners that don't know you.
Cool. So my name is Tauriq Adams. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. I grew up in a tiny little suburb called Lotus River, which is on the Cape Flats. Towards the end of 2015, my wife and myself, we decided to make the move and emigrate to Norway. Before moving to Norway, like I said, I grew up on the Cape Flats. I'm born in 1980. That makes me quite old. And, I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to grow up in sort of the tail end of apartheid. So I witnessed Nelson Mandela, gaining freedom in 1993, 1994. That was also the year that I went to a high school. And I was privileged enough to go to what we would call a Model C high school. And grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, being involved in technology, IT. And then 2015, 2016 made the move to Norway. So from one of the most unequal countries in the world to one of the most equal
countries.
Yeah, in first world countries. It's crazy. It's complete opposites.
Jeez. And just on that, and I'm gonna just expand on some of the things you touched on about like growing up in the Cape Flats. But what's one thing people don't know about you?
The one thing people don't know about me, I think, is the fact that I'm a really good chess player. And I think in primary school, I might have won an award or two. But primary school, St. Augustine's, I was killing the game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And but then I went to Wynberg Boys, which is a sporting school. So being great at chess in like a macho rugby school is not the coolest thing. That's kind of like one step above the librarian. You know what I'm saying? in a boys only sports school, to be out there like, yo, I'm good at chess. That's not cool. So I really love the game. Yeah.
And I'm guessing you didn't get the girls, right?
Well, look, I mean, it depends on who you ask, eh?
Okay, no, cool. So, Tauriq, I mean, you briefly touched on like growing up in the Cape Flats. So I just want to start and at the beginning and just briefly touch on that. So just tell me about how was it growing up in the Cape Flats, because nowadays is the narrative of the Cape Flats actually being a very bad neighborhood. But I mean, now we can actually hear it from the horse's mouth. Take me through that and just tell me, how was that childhood growing up in the Cape Flats, especially at the tail end of apartheid?
So Lotus River is one of these weird ones where it's a really small suburb that sits in between Grassy Park and Philippi. And just behind Lotus River is Zikuflei. And then sort of in front of Lotus River is Ottery and Fairways. Mm. So it's really small in the broader context of, when people talk about the Cape Flats and Mitchell's Plain and Lavender Hill and the gang areas and Parkwood. Lotus River is kind of this weird one that sits in the middle of it all. And for sure, there were parts of Lotus River that were really dangerous. And growing up in Lotus River, taught you to have street smarts. So if you were going to the shop crossing this field, you're not wearing your watch, you're putting the coins in your shoe, you're taking precautions, you're walking in a group. Those are sort of the basics. And then I think growing up, it taught you to fend for yourself. Well, my parents took the decision to enroll myself in karate. I think I must have been 5 years old. So from the age of about 5 all the way through to my early 20s, I did Shukokai karate, and that at least made me a lot more comfortable or confident when finding yourself in a tricky situation.
And circling back to the karate, are there any lessons that you learned whilst doing karate that have helped you today and that you still carry? Because I hear a lot of friends, I mean, I have a friend who did karate, and not to lead you on, but I mean, apparently it teaches you the likes of discipline as well from a young age. But are there any lessons that you learned during that time?
I think absolutely. I think karate laid the foundation in many respects. And as cheesy as it sounds, it is about discipline. It's about self-control. It's about... I think a big one for myself is probably, I won't say that I have mastered it, but on the journey toward mastering your emotions, and being composed and monitoring your breathing and not being flustered and, keeping a cool head. One of the big things you learn is, when there's a big disagreement in the boardroom, some guys lose their cool. Some people just, they aren't able to remain composed. And certainly with karate, when you find yourself in a tricky situation, the one thing you learn, or you should learn, is how to stay calm and how to stay composed and how to stay level-headed. Things like balance. Balance is another big one. and it's one of those things there where, every dog has its day, so one day you're on top and one day you're not. And with karate, there's always the day when your sensei works with you. And for me, in the latter stages of karate, my sensei was a woman, Sensei Maimuna.
Oh, wow.
And she would regularly kick the crap out of you if need be, so that's a humbling experience, so humility, composure, balance, strength, discipline, all of these things definitely stood me in good stead, having the kind of focus, understanding what it is you're trying to achieve, going after it, setting a target, pursuing it, the idea of training and discipline. Those are all things that I credit to the discipline of karate, for sure.
Tauriq, after high school, decided to go and study at Cape Tech. So you said you went to Cape Tech, right, to study, did you say IT?
Yeah,
right.
Information technology, that's right.
And so that degree was for how long? For 3 years?
3-4 years, yeah.
Oh, so you took the scenic route, clearly.
Look, I took the scenic route. I mean,
Okay, no, cool. And then what happened from there? Towards your penultimate years?
Yeah. So, and I think this is like I call these sliding door moments, and this is a big one. What happened was I'd gone to an interview at a company called DVT, Dynamic Visual Technology, and back then, DVT were the only guys that was doing business intelligence, and they had like a BI module, so data mining and data warehousing. That was like what I was really interested in. I was really interested in data mining, data warehousing, And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but for some obscure reason, I ended up meeting with Clive Hubbard, who was the then CEO of DVT. So I sat in and, I was all about like the SQL code and, getting down to programming. And he was like, look, Tauriq, I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't see you as being a programmer. I don't think you're built for writing programs. I think that you're a project manager. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? Because I was just like, yo, I want the job.
I just need the paper.
Yo, when can I start? When can I start? And he's like, no. And he's like, look, I tell you what, do me a favor and do this course at a place called FTI in Kenilworth. It's called the Faculty Training Institute. They offer 2 different diploma tracks. One is for business analysis and one is project management. Do this diploma course. And if you graduate and you come back, I'll give you a job. And I was like, you got to be kidding. And he's like, I'm dead serious. So, of course, I shake the man's hand and off I go. And I go back home to my folks and I'm like, look, guys, change of plan. I'm going to be doing this diploma course at FTI. And the folks are like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing. I feel it in my bones. I'm a natural born leader. Like, this is the direction. And something he said resonated with me, and I'd always thought that, my natural leadership abilities, I always felt like I had more to offer than just being sort of a programmer. Sure. So, of course, I go to this place, go onto the website, and the first thing that comes up is the price tag. And I think back then, in like the early 2000s, this must have been like 2003, 2004, it must have been like 20K or something. And this wasn't even like for 3 years. So like the 20K was, I think Cape Technicon's entire tuition must have set us back like 20K or 22 or 25K. And then there's this like diploma course that runs, I think, for like 8 months with the same amount of money. And obviously my folks didn't have the money. So then I went to go and work in film production and just hustle for some cash to pay for the course.
And then just from there, I mean, I have a note here, and I remember you briefly telling me this story. When did this whole Woolies story happen? Because I was really intrigued and inspired by that. When did you actually work at Woolies throughout all of this time?
Oh, yeah, so Woolworths. So growing up on the Cape Flats, I must have been, I was 16 years old when I got my first job, and that was for Woolworths in the waterfront.
And what is your job there?
So I was a packer. I was a packer. Yeah. And what that meant was I would literally get up at something like 4 a.m, and I'd take a taxi from Lotus River to Wynberg, and then I'd run around to the main road and take a taxi from Wynberg to Cape Town, the Cape Town station. And then I would take a taxi from Cape Town station to the waterfront. So I would take 3 taxis in the morning to get to Woolworths before they open the stores, and then strap up and grab a jacket and then hit the cold chain or hit the deep freeze, And back then there were like 3 of us. There was a guy called Ridwan Links. There was another dude, I forgot his name, and myself. So there's only 2 jackets, So if you come late, you don't have a jacket, bro, and you're in the freezer. You know what I'm saying?
And then, so now I'm trying to figure out now, how do you land up in Norway? Because that's where you're based right now. How did the universe conspire to make sure he landed up in Norway?
I think that's, you know what? I think it's all those years of working in a deep freeze. I think God had a plan for me, to be honest, like learning to love the cold, not feeling or being affected by the cold. Because at some point, I just got used to working in the cold and I enjoyed it. And so to answer your question, sometime Old Mutual was 2004, 5, 6, 7, 2 years at Old Mutual, Pinelands. And then 2007 was BOE Private Clients. And somewhere in 2007 is when I met my wife, Anna. And in 2007, 2008, that was just us sort of, getting to know each other. And towards the end of, I think it was early 2009, it was just after the financial crisis, the credit crunch crisis. The market meltdown 2008. So early 2009, I left BOE Private Clients and took a sabbatical. And that was really just me taking a month off and going to Norway. Because at that stage, things had gotten quite serious between Anna and myself. She had come down, almost finished her studies, but she had made, I think, 2 trips down to Cape Town to sort of see what is going on here. And so I think it was in April, May 2009 was when I went to Norway for the first time. And that was for a month, and I was really just to kind of, I literally flew across the end of the world to meet with this woman to sort of figure out, what is this all about?
So clearly you've been a risky person ever since, right?
Look, you roll the dice, you take a chance. And I went to Norway. I had a complete blast. And it gave me a fresh perspective on things. I think I probably felt a little bit, not ballsy, but I felt quite comfortable with the kind of learnings and experience that I had at Old Mutual and BOE in terms of running projects.
So Tauriq, before we take a break and we get to the meaty part of you starting your first business, I'd love to ask a question and I believe you wrote an article on this and about project management, right? Because your experiences on project management. What do you think the future is of project management, number one? And the reason why I ask that is because when I look at where I'm working and other companies, I hardly see titles of project manager. It's almost like if you in finance, you're gonna manage your own projects. It's almost like the different titles within a company almost have to have project management skills, if that makes sense. Like there's no designated, and that's from my experience, project manager versus the past where there used to be a person who's like, guys, I'm the lead, I'm leading this project and I'll bring everyone together. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're spot on. And there's in South Africa, we can talk about Europe maybe in the second session, but certainly in South Africa, in big corporate companies, there was the trend of having a PMO, which was the Project Management Office. And this was a bunch of PMs that were technically hired out into the business to run and execute projects. And then I think PMOs just became bloated and expensive. And the PMs there costed way too much money for what they delivered. So at the end of the day, a PM or the project manager is a resource. And one of the things that I always took care of and made sure I understood was my personal business case. Like in my mind, I always needed to know what it is I'm building and how does it make money. So this project is about building this glass, and it's going to cost 10 Rand to make the glass, but then we're going to sell the glass to this client for 14 Rand, so we profit 4 Rand per glass. Okay, cool. And I'm costing 1 Rand out of the 4 Rand, and then you make 3 Rand. And then I'm in my mind, I'm going, okay, cool. This makes sense, rands and cents. Now, in terms of the future, I don't see. I mean, you're spot on. I don't think the title exists anymore. I think we've seen a move toward product managers. And I think that comes as a result of organizations being more agile and lean. And these days, if you are busy building something, typically you're building a product, maybe a service. With the kind of tools and technologies and with the kind of like, when I say tools and technologies, when we talk about Trello and Slack and ways of collaborating and doing things, I think everyone in the next three years, even now, I think everyone is a project manager, whether you think you are or not.
Okay.
But the fact that you get up in the morning, iron your clothes, put your suit on, go to work, do what you need to do, come home, make dinner, that's project management. So everyone on some level is a project manager. You're project managing your life. If you've got a goal, if you I want to go on holiday at the end of the year, it's a little project. You start by looking at the travel packages, you put your budget together. Everyone is the CEO of their own life. Everyone is the project manager of their own life because, let's face it, it's a timeline. You have a certain amount of time or you have a goal, and the goal has a deadline, and then there's a number of steps you need to take in order to reach the goal. So what's that saying? A dream with a plan becomes a goal, and a goal broken down into steps, becomes a project. There's one of those Instagram memes. I forgot the exact way it goes, but it's one of those things where you have this thing, you write down the steps, you take the steps, and then before you know it, there's a certain number of things you do on a daily basis to get there, and that's project management. So whether you're doing it in your business or in your personal life, I think everyone is a PM.
So just, I have one more question before we take our 2-minute break. Just a side question. You spoke about Slack and the tools. What's your top line views, briefly, on the future of jobs, especially in this world of digitization and technology, AI, etc., etc.?
Look, I think that in the next less than 5 years, things will change dramatically. I think that I don't think anyone quite realizes the rate at which the changes are now currently being, I don't want to say implemented, but the changes that we're seeing in the way people work are so advanced. It's moving exponentially. And when you listen to guys like John Sani, Trend Specialist, when you start looking at the fourth industrial revolution, when you start looking at the convergence of AI, tech, the cloud, Sweden has got driverless trucks doing deliveries. So I think the workforce is going to change. I mean, we're not going to recognize the workforce in the next couple of years. I think that a lot of what people are studying now will become irrelevant, not even worthwhile pursuing. And I think that the world as we know it is, we're undergoing dramatic change. So the world of work is definitely changing a lot faster than what people think.
So based on that, I mean, the workforce is going to change, but do you see at an absolute level a loss of jobs, or do you see? Because I know, I mean, when you read the articles and we balance the views, there's going to be new jobs that are going to be created, and obviously a lot of jobs that we currently do are going to fade away. You know, I mean, there's a saying that we don't know what is the saying again, that the job we're going to be doing in 10 years' time has not even been invented as yet, you know?
Exactly. I mean, look at social media. Just look at social media. Like, I think it was 5 years ago. Like 5 years ago, it was just people that were kind of like on Facebook posting daily.
Yeah.
You've got influencers, you've got SEO companies, you've got like campaign managers. I mean, you phone up any company now and you want to advertise on Facebook and Insta and have a media package. You know, those businesses literally sprang up in the last 5 years. And that's not slowing down. You know, so...
And do you think... Yeah, sorry, carry on.
I mean, I had the privilege and the honor of spending time with who was the CEO of one of the fastest growing and biggest banks in Africa. And he said that he's got a staff complement of 9,000 people.
Wow.
And he can run his bank on 3,500 people.
Oh, wow.
He can literally run the bank on 3,500 people. The problem he has is, what does he do with the other people? Does he just then say, "You fired"? Does he then try and make them entrepreneurs and make them open up their own bank branches? What does he do? You know, because at the end of the day, it's 9,000 jobs. You know, so you're in this position where you can't just sort of chop change and say, you know what, it's a capitalist society. If it's not me, then it's someone else. Because at the end of the day, it's like, what are we talking, 5,500 mouths to feed? Or there are 5,500 employed people that have families, you know. So, and he's aware of it, and he's like, look, you know, technology is just automating everything. So all of the manual call center stuff, or I don't know the exact processes, but the point I'm trying to make is, he went and said, you know, he's got 9,000 people in the bank and he can run this business using 3,500 people because of technology. So, yeah.
Look, I think we actually probably need another episode just on the future of jobs. So on that note, let me give you a 2-minute break, and then I will Skype you again to let you know when I'm ready. Let me just save this, and then we'll be back for the second part.
Sounds good.
Cool, man.
Ciao.
So cool. Let's get back right into it. So where we left off was where you actually ended up going to Norway, like at the beginning of 2009. So in between you going to Norway for the first time, when did you start your first business? And just briefly, where was the light bulb moment to start a business? Let's start there.
So, I mean, as silly as it sounds, I think, you know, growing up in Lotus River, I had two parents that, from a professional perspective or from a career perspective, couldn't be further apart in how they approached their careers. My mom, I think, spent virtually her entire life working for one company, right?
Wow.
So I think she spent 40, 50 years working for Rexruform. I mean, she was pretty much as high up as you could go without being like part of the family that controlled the business. In fact, she was part of that family. I mean, she was like part of the family. And my mom, I think her wish for me was always to get or find yourself in a good company and then, you know, just continue working for a good company. That was my mom. That was her sort of influence, right? And I thought that could have been Woolworths. You know, my mom was the happiest person when I landed the job at Woolworths, and she was like, "You've got to work your way up now, my boy." And I did. You know, I was in there on the packing, you know, doing my thing. I did like an internship, little stint at Woolworths head office in IT, and you know, it wasn't for me. You know, just sort of this idea of this ladder, at least the Woolworths ladder, I was kind of like, you know, I wanted more. And then my dad was always just his own boss, or for a large chunk of his life towards the end, he was his own boss. You know, he worked for himself. And there were lean periods and there were periods where he did really well. But I just loved the idea that he didn't owe anyone anything, like not a bank. He didn't owe the bank money. He didn't owe anyone anything. He was the king of his own castle. And the castle wasn't this huge castle, but it was his. The house, the 2 cars, the garage, his tools, he owned it all. And he always told me, my boy, the man without debt is king. Never forget that. The man without debt is king. So my dad could literally, he could wake up in the morning and be like, are you busy? And I'm like, nah, I don't have anything. And he's like, well, then let's go to the waterfront, or you want to go to Musenberg? Let's go have a cup of coffee. And my dad would take me out, Beautiful day. And, but then there were other days where, like, throughout 3 or 4 weekends straight, he's working, he's grinding. He's got a huge job, he's got this big client. And he's got to do what he has to do. And
jeez.
At some point, I was out there. I remember there was this day where he needed my help. He needed a quote, and he needed to email the dude in wherever the guy was. It was like some eccentric guy, and this guy wanted a stainless steel handmade braai machine where you could braai sausages individually. So you could put like different sausages in like slots each with their own gas control.
Jeez.
And my dad was like, you got to type the quote. And when I started putting the numbers in, I was like, yo, is this what you're billing this dude? And my dad is like, yeah. And I'm like, damn, bro. Like, you got to teach me the stainless steel, man. Like, are you serious? So that was my dad. My dad was his own boss, independent. He worked for himself. He was the king of his own castle. He inspired me. And he really, against all odds, was extremely successful in what he did. And my mom, on the other hand, was the stable, secure, guaranteed safety of being permanently employed at one company. So I'd always had these two, these two people to consult.
And then tell me about the first business. Then, well, you started in Norway that ultimately became a success. First of all, please describe your business and what is the name of the business?
Yeah, so let's just fast forward. So 2015 was when we made the decision to leave the country and we wanted to start a family. And then, I think first things first, I got to say that it's an absolute privilege to have the decision or to have the option of being able to decide, I want to do this abroad. So it's by just pure luck, I suppose, that Anna's Norwegian and that we had the kind of, so like what I'm trying to acknowledge here is that not everyone has the kind of like option to go like, oh, well, we want to move to Australia or to Switzerland or to London or, so it was a tough choice, but ultimately we decided to move to Norway. So Anna went across first, secured employment, and then I followed soon thereafter. So whilst in Norway, I'd been doing bits of freelance project management work for different companies and met a guy called Alex Breivik. And when I met Alex, we met at a bar, we were chatting, and, it was like, what do you do? What do I do? And what he did was he told me he's going to solve the problem of food waste. So I burst out laughing. And I was like, what are you talking about, dude? And he's like, I'm going to fix food waste. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then a couple of months later, I'd see him again. I'm like, hey, so how's this food waste thing coming on? And he's like, no, I'm still working on it. We're busy mapping the process. And I was like, cool. And then I'd finished the contract and chatted to him. And I'm like, listen, are you still busy working with this food waste thing? And he's like, yeah. And then by then he had known what I do. And what I told him I did was, I'm the guy that takes the vision and turns it into a product or a service, And I said, you've got this vision of building something. I'm the guy that does everything until at the other end of the tube is a product or service. And he was like, wow, we need people like that. So then what followed was we had a couple of sessions where we looked at solving the problem of food waste. So, and I got to say at this point, there was nothing at all that talked to a digital canteen. We were just looking at the problem of food waste. And the outcome of that exercise is what took us to the business called Food Farm. So what we had looked at was the entire value chain. We had canvassed the entire module of how food is made, how it's bought, how it's sold, how it's distributed. And in analyzing this entire thing, we saw that by changing human behavior slightly, you could reduce food waste. Because a lot of the times, restaurants or businesses either have too little stock, raw ware, like raw materials, or they have too much. And if you have too much, then your food goes to waste.
Sure.
Because when you're cooking food, it's something that's in a fridge, right? So what we discovered was that restaurants, in and of itself, is a pretty bad business, if you think about it. Like a restaurant, so much of what a restaurant does is not actually related to food. It's marketing, it's branding, it's the visuals.
It's the experience, yeah.
It's the experience, it's the dining, it's the forks, it's the serviettes, it's everything else other than the food. And at the end of it all, there's no guarantee that anyone is going to walk in the door, And then, of course, you've got canteens in buildings as well. And I mean, canteens are quite wasteful because a canteen is another animal. Canteens are run on subsidized models where they literally get paid to procure X amount of raw materials, and they make food that's enough to feed X number of people in the building, regardless of how many people actually come down and eat. So what we figured out was if we could have a pre-ordered system, a system of someone being able to pre-order a meal and connect the kitchen to the company through the logistics, there was a workable model. So what we ended up building was what we thought was the world's first digital canteen. And what we really did was, using principles of the sharing economy, we just connected companies to existing restaurants or kitchens. Now, a kitchen and a restaurant is different. A kitchen is like a caterer. A kitchen is just a place that makes food, normally with just a normal brand, but they make catered food.
Sure.
So like you have caterers, and then you have a restaurant, which is a brand and a business with a name, or it's a franchise, and. But what we did was we connected a company to a kitchen and then have the company provide the subsidy for the employee. So like a canteen. So in other words, it wasn't a B2C business. It wasn't like a Mr. Delivery or Uber Eats or Foodora or Delivery Hero or Deliveroo. So me and you couldn't sign up. So a company needed to sign up. So the company signed up and created an account. And then the company said, okay, I'm going to add my 10 employees and I'm going to give each person $50 as a subsidy, or $80 or $100 as a subsidy. So now this person has R100 subsidy per day. Or we could slice and dice it. We could decide like, okay, look, you want to give someone $100 a day, so they can start with 2,100 Rand in their account, or they can have like $50, use it or lose it. So the company can decide on the subsidy model. But then the outcome of that was the employee downloaded the app on their phone. And then, of course, the company or the office manager, that person chose what kitchens they wanted food from on what day. So like on a Monday, I'm eating chicken from Mnotho's.
Yeah.
Tuesday, I'm having Tauriq's burgers. On a Wednesday, I'm having Alex's sushi. On a Thursday, pizza from Carnita. On a Friday, it's like Taco Friday. So like, John's Tacos.
And
yeah.
No, and just whilst we're on this whole connecting, companies with kitchens, and sorry to interrupt you, I just wanted to know, like, what was your pitch, right? To first, because you're connecting two companies here, so you're pitching two people, and you're creating this platform. And what is your first pitch, number one? And then, like, how many times were you rejected? Were you even rejected, or did people actually fall off their seat and say, "God damn, this is the best thing since sliced bread"?
Dude. Okay, so you want to talk about the challenges? I remember the day that we signed up the 5th kitchen. So now, in the beginning, we only had like 2 kitchens, right? And the amount of meals we were producing wasn't a lot because we were in a co-working space, and literally all the smaller companies were the guinea pigs, like the really small sort of other startups. They were the guinea pigs. They were like ordering, and they were like our sort of user base. And so it was like, we would get feedback directly. It was like, guys, these salads are like really shitty. Like these hardpacker meals were like the worst thing ever. The billing, the production lists, like day in and day out, we running around ourselves, like getting and fetching deliveries, orders not going through, dudes ordering, can't cancel, like bugs in the app. And remember, it's 2 apps, right? It's iOS and Android. So like Alex has got an iPhone and I've got an Android phone. So we're fixing bugs, we're testing, we're going crazy. The kitchen, the 2 kitchens on board at the time, Alex knew the guys, and they were willing to just really experiment with a pre-order system, because what it meant for the kitchen was the day before they're getting a list, which is pretty cool if you think about it. It's not like on demand. It's not like I'm calling you at like 10 o'clock in the morning saying, yo, I need like 400 lunches for today. It's like the day before at 4, 5 o'clock, you're getting your list of what you need to make. So the morning comes, you make the chow, it's ready, we collect it and we deliver it. It's pretty sweet. It's kind of like if you have a kitchen, if you have a business, and I say, Mnotho, if I order 10 burgers from you, will you give me a discount? And then you're going to be like, yeah, I can work your discount. Of course. Then I go like, Mnotho, if I order 10 burgers every day, pre-ordered, what's my discount? You're going to be like, well, if you're guaranteeing me cash flow and it's like fairly stable, we can talk about it, right? Of course. So on the kitchen side, that was kind of like the pitch for kitchens. And then for companies, it was quite, I won't say it was easy, but it was also convenient in a sense. A lot of the old buildings in Oz don't have canteens. And it's the worst thing ever in winter to go out and get like food, like to trap in the snow. It's like, damn, like, do I really have to go out now and mission for lunch? And with the company subsidy, that was like the big thing. If your company signs up and gives you like $50 or $80, like our base price was around, I think 80 NOK is what got you a warm meal, like a proper meal, like 400 grams of warm food.
Okay.
So it's not costing you, the employee, anything because the company's paying. Obviously, if you order food for more than $80, it then comes off your credit card. And of course, me and you both know, ain't nobody trying to order more than the subsidy, yo. So like whatever your subsidy is, you're ordering just underneath that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that was the big thing. And what we did was we looked at what the canteen subsidy model business looked like. And as long as we could match that price point, we knew we were competitive. So now you had a company with like 20, 30 people. If they were to have a canteen in a building, it would cost the company X number of crowns per month. And as long as we're beating that price and we're cheaper than the other on-demand players, we're winning. So we got to a point where we could offer you a warm meal delivered for like $80. Whether it was curry, noodles, sushi, whatever. And that was huge, And then by the time we got to 5 different kitchens, like my sales pitch to a company was like, you can order food from a different kitchen every day. Because remember, it was like 5 days in a week. So if you have 5 kitchens, it's a different kitchen, every day. But I mean, the first kitchen, Gastro Catering, was a big catering company. And of course, you could obviously order any meal from Gastro. And what we built was a kitchen admin platform where the kitchen, they could create their own dishes. So the kitchen is like, I have like cheap baguettes for like $20, yogurt, all the way through to a warm meal. And then sometimes it'll have like a rotating warm dish of the day, which is like $79. And then on the app, you could choose and just subscribe to the warm dish of the day from Gastro. And then every day you just get the warm dish. Today it's like chicken with mashed potatoes. Tomorrow it's like lasagna. The next day it's like beef stroganoff. And then of course you can punch in your allergies and what you're allergic to.
And so just on that, I mean, now you've obviously pitched to to both companies, and yeah, it's sounding like you're in the Wild West, you know, in the beginning stages, you know, which is obviously always a great story when you look back. I just want to know, in terms of the platform, two-pronged question here, but how did you decide in terms of the cut you're taking from the kitchen or from the company? You know, I mean, Uber, I think, is at 20%. What were your benchmarks? Were you benchmarking against that, or were you taking the amount of discounts that you managed to negotiate with the kitchen?
Well, so Uber takes a lot more than that. And so Uber, Foodora, Mr. Delivery, they are what we call on-demand players. Mm-hmm. And this is a big point to chat about, because the on-demand players are guys that at any point in the day you place an order, which means there needs to be a driver available to go and collect this meal, and there needs to be a restaurant ready to make the meal. You know, our platform worked where the kitchen determined their cutoff times, right? So in the app on a Monday, it's Monday, I'm at work, I've got until 5 o'clock on a Monday to order for Tuesday. And in the app, we built in reminders to remind people to just don't forget to order. But then what we also did was we spent a lot of time on our UX where you could just subscribe to your favorites. So like you could set your week up, because people are creatures of habit, right? So your company is now signed up. It's like week 2. After the second week, dude, you've tasted all the kitchens. Now, obviously, we've got a range of kitchens, and the company is like, look, this kitchen's too expensive. This one is too cheap. So the kitchen chooses, the company chooses like however many kitchens they want. And of course, the company can have multiple kitchens on the same day, or just one kitchen per day. We normally recommend like one base kitchen, and then maybe on top you add another like speciality, or just choose whatever. But the big thing is, on the user app, they could subscribe. The user can subscribe to a meal. So like on a Monday, I'm having the wok by Tunco. On a Tuesday, this by Gastro. On a Wednesday, it's sushi, this dish. So now you know what your week is looking like, right? So every day, Monday to Friday, you're getting your dish. In terms of the cuts from the kitchen, we were a lot less than what we have here in Norway, which is Foodora. Foodora take north of 30% from the kitchen, which is very expensive. And what we've done is, because we looked at the entire value chain, the company pays a delivery fee per kitchen. So let's say you, the company, and you have 20 people working with you, and you give everyone like a $50 subsidy, and you have one kitchen on one day. Then regardless of how many meals you order on that one kitchen, you pay like a $50 delivery for the one kitchen. If you have 2 kitchens, you have 100 Rand delivery for 2 kitchens. If you have 3 kitchens, it's 150. You know, so that then covers the delivery fee per kitchen. And that then streamlines everything. So because everything is grouped, bulked, and we use really fancy programming, in the morning, all the kitchens know exactly how much food to produce, what time it's being picked up, and where it's being delivered to. So we're able to not take like 30% plus cuts out of the kitchen. The kitchens are happy because they're getting a list the day before. And not only that, they're having line of sight for the next 2-3 months into the future. So because everyone is subscribing, those subscriptions get pumped back to the kitchen. So the kitchen long-term gets a view on like production and like their business and their growth. And then of course they start getting smart. So the kitchen can run promotions, they can run specials, they can run discounts. You know, so for instance, we made kind of not a policy, but like we had a rule where we would never have 2 of the same kinds of kitchen on our platform. So if we have 2 kitchens doing sushi, we've got sushi covered. If we have 2 guys doing curry, that's covered. If we have 2 Thai, noodle, whatever, then that's covered. You know, so we never have more than 2. And the reason we do that is because, you know, maybe one is like high end and one is kind of like more average. But you don't want people to start outpricing each other and then just dropping the quality. So we had a scenario where we had like a dedicated soup kitchen, and then we had another sort of half bar where they also had like a lovely range of soups. And the one guy phoned me, the one guy's like, Tauriq, we're not selling these soups anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, you're charging X amount for the soup. And there's another kitchen on our platform, and they're doing the same soup for this amount. The first guy's like, oh, well, then he lowers his price, and then the second guy's like, hey, I'm slowing down on these. And then
it's a race to the bottom, basically.
It's a race to the bottom, but we're creating a kitchen marketplace where you begin to sort of know, or at least kitchens begin to level out and it becomes acceptable. This is kind of like what the going rate is for a chicken noodle soup. This is like, if you're charging like $195, it's like, you got to be kidding. Like the going rate is, so we believe that it's a model that's sustainable, it's workable. The kitchens prefer it because it's pre-ordered, so they know what they need to produce. And it reduces waste because by knowing what you need to buy, because you know what you need to make, you're not buying too much or too little. So the problem with on-demand players is no one knows when suddenly you're going to get hit with like 100 Uber orders or 100 mystery delivery orders.
Yeah.
You just have this little iPad in your shop, and then like pang, lunchtime, suddenly there's like a corporate order where you now need like 45 different pizzas or whatever, and then like, how do you account for that? Like, how do you plan for that?
Sure.
So the whole I, me, now, on demand world is not sustainable.
And just whilst you're on that, I mean, thank you for giving us that detail. And it's almost, and I like your model in terms of it makes it cheaper for everyone and more affordable versus your other tech companies that are charging 30 plus percent.
5%, 30%. Man. That's the number.
And obviously, I mean, they have their own reasons, and as you even said now, that they're also trying to account for those surges that they might get. But I just want to know, like, I mean, you've built this platform now with many kitchens, I presume, right? Do you have competitors, number one, actually, or someone that's on that case?
We've got loads of competitors. Probably we need to throw in the likes of the Foodoras and the Uber Eats and the on-demand platforms and your normal corporate caterers. I think they're all competitors. We also have big players that are now delivering not ready-made meals but groceries via app to corporate companies. Those are also competitors. And then a funny thing happened, and this is really just like part of the hustle. What I used to do was I used to hop in with the driver, and actually when I was bored in the office and there was not much to do, as the COO, if things are running smoothly, then, you kind of like, there's a fire burning that I'm not smelling, or you kind of just, you try and improve the platform. So
nice life problems. This is almost, it reminds me of your dad, right? So when you used to take you to the waterfront.
So what we did was we made a decision to insource the driving and control the driving ourselves. So in the early stages, we outsourced the company to do delivery. But the problem there was the fact that when a company phoned us to say that their meal hasn't arrived or the meal is late, we would have to phone the third party, and the third party then contacted the driver, and the driver then gave them an update. Then they phoned us back, and we then phoned the company back, and it's an hour later. It was a nightmare. And we already built in all of the functionality, because we needed to tell this third-party company where to pick up, what time to pick up, and where to deliver. So we already had all of the info. We just outsourced it. And then what I discovered was, number one, there were two issues. Number one, I discovered that when they went to a building, if there were more than one company, in the same building, this third party was charging us for each company. Right, so now there's one building, let's call it the Standard Bank building, and there's 10 floors, and there are companies in there that are ordering from us. The third-party delivery company, they're charging us for 3 drops. But in our mind, it's like, this is one drop. It's like one location, dude. Like you're pulling up a car, and then like you're running to 3 floors, yeah, for sure. But like you're billing us 3 times. So that was the first thing, right? So once we cut the delivery company out and we insourced the drivers, I then used to jump in with the driver and go and check where we're delivering and like what do these addresses look like. So then I thought, like, you know what? If we're delivering to like 2 or 3 floors in this building, it means that this building doesn't have a canteen, right? Of course. And then I would then gangster go knock on the door and be like, yo, we this food from guys. Here's some flyers. We're delivering to like your neighbors above you and your neighbors below you. Don't you want to order some food from us? And I mean, that was part of like growing the business, you know. So if we're in a building and there's a company ordering, chances are there's no canteen or maybe there's a bad canteen. But that was the hustle. And then I got a little bit smart and I was just like, hey, Tauriq, why are you running around? Why did you just find out who owns the building? I mean, it's like, yeah, who owns the building? And then we figured out who owns the building and like who the real estate company was. And then we started building and advancing the software to incorporate what we call drop spots, where, you know, if it's one location, you know, you can create like a shared spot and then you could sort of split the costs amongst, you know, different companies because we're dropping at one location. So we might as well pass that saving on because the driver's going to one building. He can pull up and then just take his thermal boxes out and start delivering. And that's when we started moving into, I would say that was a pivot, really. So we then, after continuing developing and looking at the real estate market, we then created this thing where we called it a closed region. And this is when we landed a really big contract with a real estate company that owned sort of the waterfront park in Oslo, Akerbrygge. I think you've been to Akerbrygge.
Yes.
Akerbrygge, the boats are that really nice area. And what we did there was we went to the real estate owner and we said, look, we're able to connect in all of your restaurants in this area to all of your tenants in a closed loop. It's kind of like, you know, you own all of this real estate. You have these companies and they're not talking to each other. So like in your mind, imagine you at the waterfront in Cape Town and there's all these corporate offices. There's no ways that they can order discounted food from any one of those restaurants. So we built this platform where, you know, we could literally just connect. If you were in the waterfront and you worked at Allen Gray or Nedbank or whatever, we could connect you to any of the restaurants or other services through the app, and then you could place an order. And then, of course, it's subsidized by the company. So you both, I mean, the kitchen or the company is winning. They're making more food. The company is getting great food. The employees scoring because it's subsidized meal. It's win-win. Everyone is winning. You know, it's win-win for everyone. You know, so that's what we ended up building. So we built this platform where we could create these closed regions